There is an ancient Buddhist story that tells of a man who once sought out a renowned Zen master because he felt dissatisfied and resentful toward others. He spoke of someone who had insulted him, wounding his pride. He said, "They insulted me. I feel I cannot let it go. I want revenge." The master listened quietly, then gently smiled. He handed the man a carefully wrapped gift and said, "If I give you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man replied, "Of course it belongs to you." The master nodded. "Exactly. In the same way, if someone offers you an insult and you do not accept it, the insult still belongs to them. It cannot harm you unless you take it into your heart." This simple story carries a profound lesson. Anger, if we do not accept it, cannot exist in our hearts. But once we embrace it and feed it, we ourselves suffer first. Anger is like holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. But before you can throw it, your own hand is already scorched. The Buddha once taught, "Anger is the fire that burns away merit, the poisoned arrow that pierces the soul." When the mind is at peace, life feels light and gentle. But just one spark of anger can cloud the mind immediately. We no longer see reality as it is, but only through the distorted lens of emotion. In such moments, our words and actions often burst forth impulsively, leaving behind serious consequences. In modern life, anger seems to arise more frequently. A single unfriendly glance, a careless comment on social media, or being stuck in traffic on a hot day can be enough to trigger an outburst. But what we must clearly see is that such outbursts not only hurt others, they erode our health, reduce our clarity, and dissolve our inner peace. Modern science confirms that every time we get angry, the body releases stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol, causing rapid heartbeat, increased blood pressure, and weakening of the immune system. Repeated often, this leads to heart disease, sleep disorders, and even depression. What is striking is that many people nurture anger as if it were a habit. They do not realize that negative emotions, if not examined and released, are like wounds that never heal. What begins as a small scratch, if constantly irritated, swells and festers. Anger works the same way. The more we replay it, the more suffering we create. Buddhism does not teach us to suppress or deny emotions, but to recognize and transform them. Anger is also a part of the mind, just as dark clouds are a part of the sky. No one can drive away clouds by force, but they will naturally dissipate when the wind blows and the sun shines. The key is to invite the light of wisdom and the wind of compassion into our hearts. The ancients said, "One moment of anger can bring 1,000 days of regret." This is true in almost every relationship. One careless word can destroy years of friendship. One impulsive action can fracture a family, and one rash decision in anger can cost us lifelong opportunities. And the most painful thing is that once the anger passes, we often regret it, but words once spoken and actions once taken cannot be undone. Looking deeply, we will see that anger often does not arise from others, but from our own expectations and attachments. We expect others to understand us, to behave as we think is right, and when they do not, we feel offended. But if we let go of such rigid expectations and open our hearts to accept differences, many causes of anger will naturally disappear. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught many methods to restrain and transform anger. He did not speak in abstractions, but gave concrete practices, from changing our perspective, cultivating mindfulness, to nurturing compassion and equanimity. These practices are not just for monasteries. Anyone in any situation can practice them. In the next part, we will explore together 10 methods the Buddha taught for controlling emotions. Methods that are simple yet rarely practiced. Each will be explained clearly, with illustrative stories and practical guidance for daily application. Because if we only listen to know, the wisdom remains someone else's. But if we listen and practice, that wisdom becomes our own. To restrain and transform anger, the first and most important step is to recognize it as soon as it arises. This sounds simple, but in truth, it is what most of us overlook. When anger first stirs, if we are not mindful, it will quickly flare into a blazing fire, consuming reason. On the other hand, if we recognize it in time, we can stop it right at its inception. The Buddha once compared the human mind to a lake. When the lake is calm, we can see its bottom and everything reflected clearly. But just one stone thrown in sends ripples across the surface. And if those ripples are stirred again and again, the water becomes muddy. Anger is the same. It begins as a small ripple, but if we fail to notice it and let it spread, it will muddy the whole mind, blinding our perception of truth. A lay practitioner once asked a Zen master, "I want to practice so that anger does not control me, but I only realize it after it has already exploded." The master smiled and said, "Then observe yourself more often, like a farmer in the fields. At the first spark of fire, he extinguishes it immediately, rather than waiting for it to spread across the entire field." The teaching emphasizes that to recognize anger, we must cultivate the habit of observing our minds daily, not just when strong emotions appear. Recognizing anger does not mean judging it. Many people, when they notice themselves angry, scold themselves. "Why am I still so angry? I've practiced for so long and still can't overcome it." In truth, self-blame is just another layer of emotion piled on top, bringing no benefit. Instead, we simply acknowledge, this is anger, like an observer noticing clouds gathering or the wind rising. With mindfulness, we see the presence of the emotion without identifying with it. In modern life, recognizing emotions can be supported with simple practices. For instance, each time you notice your breath becoming rapid, your heartbeat quickening, or your body tensing, these are often signals of anger approaching. If you pay attention to these signs, you can catch the emotion at its earliest stage. Some even set reminders a few times a day to pause, breathe, and check in on their state of mind. There is a small yet meaningful story. A woman often got angry at her husband over trivial matters. After attending a mindfulness retreat, she learned the practice of pausing for 3 breaths whenever a difficult emotion arose. The next time her husband left his shoes scattered in the house, she felt anger rising. Instead of reacting, she stopped, inhaled deeply, and exhaled slowly 3 times. Strangely, after those 3 breaths, her anger subsided and she could speak more calmly. She realized that sometimes just a brief pause can prevent an unnecessary argument. Early recognition of emotions not only prevents impulsive words and actions, but also gives us the chance to see their deeper roots. Often, anger is not really about the present situation, but about old wounds within. Someone's words today may stir memories of pain from years ago, making our reaction disproportionate. If we do not realize this, we keep blaming others and miss the chance to heal ourselves. So how can we train this capacity for recognition? There are 3 basic steps of practice. First, cultivate daily mindfulness. By setting aside a short time each morning or evening to sit quietly and follow the breath, we gradually become more sensitive to the subtle shifts in the mind. Mindfulness is like a light shining into the darkness, helping us see clearly each wave of emotion as it arises. Second, name the emotion. When you notice anger, silently call it by name. This is anger. This is irritation. Naming it helps separate you from the emotion, preventing it from fully taking control. Third, observe without immediate interference. Do not try to push away or suppress anger right away, as this only strengthens it. Instead, allow it to be present in the space of mindfulness, like quietly watching a cloud drift by. Recognizing anger at its very beginning is the key that opens the door to inner freedom. When we are not swept away in the storm of emotions, we can choose a mindful response instead of being driven by instinct. This not only protects us from suffering, but also preserves our relationships with those around us. If in the previous part we learned how to recognize anger as it arises, the next step is to contemplate its causes. Because if we only know we are angry without understanding why, we are only touching the surface of the problem. It is like seeing a tree wilting but not looking at the roots. Watering only the leaves will not keep the tree alive. The Buddha once taught, "Every emotion has a cause, and when we clearly see the cause, we are no longer bound by it." This means anger does not appear out of nowhere. It is the result of many combined factors, from external circumstances to seeds already planted in our minds. If we look deeply, we will see that each time we are angry, underneath there is always a story, a wound, or an expectation that has been touched. Take a familiar example. A mother becomes angry when her child refuses to study. On the surface, the cause seems to be the child's laziness. But if the mother contemplates more deeply, she may realize that her hidden fear of being judged as an incapable parent is driving her reaction. Or perhaps she herself was harshly scolded by her own parents about studying, and that memory now fuels her strong response. Thus, her anger is not only about the child's behavior, but also about old wounds in her own heart. Another story tells of a meditator who constantly felt irritated by a fellow practitioner who often left sandals scattered carelessly. Every morning, seeing the sandals untidy before the meditation hall, he grew angry. One day, his teacher asked, "Whom are you angrier with, the one who left the sandals or yourself?" Only then did he realize that the irritation repeated not because of the sandals, but because he had been nurturing a habit of overreacting to small things. The sandals were merely the trigger for his own seed of frustration. Contemplating the cause of anger requires courage to look directly into ourselves. Often the root lies not in others, but in our own desires, expectations, and attachments. We usually think we are angry because the other is wrong, but in truth, it is the self that feels wounded. For example, when someone criticizes us, our anger arises not just from the words, but because we cling to the image of "I am always right" or "I am always competent." When that image is shaken, insecurity arises and anger follows. In Buddhist practice, contemplation means looking deeply into the true nature of things. Instead of stopping at the surface, the words or actions of others, we look for the roots, the underlying causes within the mind and the circumstances. It is like a doctor treating illness. He does not only relieve the symptoms, but seeks the true cause of disease to cure it at the root. To contemplate the causes of anger, we can follow a few steps. Step 1. Pause and observe. When you notice anger, do not react immediately. Pause, breathe, and give yourself space to review the whole situation. Step 2. Ask why repeatedly. Do not stop at the first answer. For example, "I'm angry because he said I was careless." Why did that statement anger me? Because I think I am careful. Why do I need others to acknowledge my carefulness? Because I fear being looked down upon. Keep asking until you reach the root of the emotion. Step 3. See everything as interdependent conditions. Anger arises from many factors: the present situation, our state of mind at that moment, past experiences, and emotional seeds already within us. Seeing this interplay reduces blame and opens the way to transformation from the root. A real-life example: a driver gets stuck in traffic and becomes frustrated because he is late for work. Looking deeply, he realizes the deeper cause is not just traffic, but that he woke up late, rushed out, and carried tension even before getting into the car. Added to this is his habit of wanting everything to go his way, making him more prone to anger than others. Recognizing this, he begins to change his morning routine so that traffic jams no longer easily trigger his temper. Contemplating the causes of anger shows us that often others are just the last drop, while the cup was already full beforehand. If we keep blaming that final drop, we will never solve the problem. Instead, if we lighten the cup by caring for our own hearts, fewer things will trigger our anger. When we practice contemplation regularly, our perspective gradually changes. Each time anger arises, instead of seeing it as failure, we view it as an opportunity to understand ourselves better. And when we understand ourselves, we also develop compassion for others, realizing that they too act from their own deep causes: fear, pressure, or unhealed wounds. When anger surges, our mind is like a stormy lake, waves of emotion crashing against the shores of consciousness. In that moment, if we speak or act, deep wounds are easily created for both ourselves and others. The Buddha taught that one of the simplest yet most effective methods to calm anger is to return to mindful breathing. At first, some might think, everyone breathes, why do we need to learn it? But mindful breathing is not just the unconscious in and out of air. It is breathing with full awareness. It means knowing clearly that we are inhaling, knowing clearly that we are exhaling, and letting that breath become a cool stream flowing through the heated heart. The story of an Indian Zen master illustrates this well. Once, a man came to the master full of complaints, criticisms, and insults. Instead of replying, the master remained silent, closed his eyes, and took deep breaths. When the man had finished, the master smiled and said, "I have just given you the greatest gift I possess, my peace. If I had not kept my peace, I would have given you my anger, and then both of us would have suffered." What kept the master peaceful was not willpower suppression, but mindful breathing itself. Practicing mindful breathing to calm anger involves 3 basic steps. Step 1. Recognize anger and stop. The moment you realize you are angry, stop all reactions, both words and actions. Inhale and exhale slowly, focusing only on the sensation of the breath entering and leaving. Like listening to the sound of a bell from beginning to end, keep your attention steady without letting the mind wander. Step 2. Breathe deeply to nourish peace. When the mind is angry, the breath often becomes shallow, rapid, and short. Intentionally make the breath deeper, longer, and softer. Inhale deeply, imagining fresh air flowing into your chest and even into the tightness in your belly caused by anger. Exhale slowly, as if releasing dark clouds covering your mind. Step 3. Contemplate while breathing. After a few breaths, when the mind has relaxed, begin to contemplate, not to dig into the faults of others, but to look deeply within yourself. Silently say, "I know I am angry. This anger is making me suffer. I will take care of it as I would care for a crying child." Simply changing the way you see anger from an enemy into something that needs care will soften its energy. In modern life, mindful breathing is even more necessary. In traffic jams, when misunderstood by a colleague, or when a child is stubborn, just a few mindful breaths can save us from impulsive reactions. A business director once shared that he applied this practice in tense meetings. Instead of interrupting or arguing immediately, he took 3 deep breaths before speaking. That small change helped him maintain good relationships with his employees and make wiser decisions. One important point is that mindful breathing should not only be practiced in moments of anger, but trained daily. If we wait until anger bursts forth to practice, we are more likely to be swept away by its power. But if we spend a few minutes each day sitting quietly and following the breath, we build a habit of peace, so that when anger comes, the mind naturally returns to the breath as to a familiar refuge. You can begin by spending 5 minutes each morning sitting upright, gently closing your eyes and following the in-breath and out-breath. There is no need to control it, only to be fully aware of each breath while smiling softly. Gradually, you will find yourself calmer, less disturbed by small things, and when anger arises, it will be more easily soothed. The Buddha once compared the breath to a rope anchoring a boat to the shore. When the storms of emotion rise, if we hold on to that rope, we will not be swept away. Mindful breathing is the anchor that keeps our mind from being drowned in anger. If mindful breathing is like cool water soothing the fire of anger, then compassion is the underground spring that nourishes the heart so that anger has no ground to grow. The Buddha taught that when facing someone who makes us angry, try to look at them with the eyes of compassion instead of only seeing their faults or the hurt they cause. This does not mean condoning wrongdoing, but understanding the roots of their behavior so as not to feed hatred further. In the scriptures, there is a story of a monk insulted and cursed by a layperson. Instead of responding, the monk gently said, "My friend, if you bring me a gift and I do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man hesitated and replied, "To me." The monk smiled. "In the same way, today you bring me harsh words, but I do not accept them. They still belong to you." Then the monk folded his hands and walked away, leaving the man bewildered. What enabled the monk to do so was that he did not see the man as an enemy, but as a person in suffering. When someone behaves poorly, it is often a sign they are under pressure, fear, or inner pain. Their anger is simply a distorted cry for help. In modern life, we often encounter situations that irritate us. A colleague who shifts blame, a family member who constantly complains, or a stranger cutting in line. If we only react with anger, we create an endless cycle. They get angry, we get angry, they become angrier. But if we pause, breathe deeply, and think, perhaps this person is tired, afraid, or facing difficulties, our hearts will soften. From there, our words and actions will also change. Practicing compassion is not only about empathy for others, but also about protecting ourselves. When angry, the body releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, raising blood pressure, quickening the heart rate, and over time damaging the heart, immune system, and even the brain. Compassion helps release these toxins, restoring balance to body and mind. There are many ways to cultivate compassion. One method is contemplation. Imagine the person who angers you in the most difficult situation, like a lost child searching for their mother in a crowded market. With that image, it is hard to maintain anger, or silently send them blessings. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you find joy. Even if they do not hear, these wishes water the seeds of compassion in our own hearts. A friend once told me about her hot-tempered boss, who often shouted at employees. Each time he scolded her, instead of getting angry, she silently thought, "May you be at peace. May you sleep well tonight." At first, she did this only to comfort herself, but gradually she noticed her boss becoming less irritable, and their relationship grew less tense. Compassion is not weakness or submission. It is the strength of an awakened heart, able to face the truth that all of us are sometimes fragile. All of us have wounds in need of healing. When we see this in others, we are less inclined to retaliate or to hurt them as they have hurt us. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, hatred never ceases by hatred in this world. By love alone does it cease. This is an eternal law. If we carry the fire of anger in our hearts, it burns both the holder and the target. But if we replace anger with the light of compassion, we illuminate both. When we develop this habit, we realize something wonderful. Every time we respond to anger with compassion, we heal ourselves. Every blessing we silently send to another is also a blessing for our own soul. If what you just heard in this section helped you find a little peace amidst life's worries, or opened a new perspective for dealing with yourself and with others, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to Dharma in Motion so that whenever we share more stories and profound teachings of the Buddha, you will be among the first to receive them. Every subscription you give is a continuation of the Dharma wheel, bringing peace and wisdom to more people. See you again in the next part, where we will continue to explore what nourishes the soul and illuminates the path of serene living. In life, we often tend to think that the emotions we are experiencing will last forever. When we are happy, we fear losing it. When we are sad or angry, we feel trapped in that emotion with no way out. But the Buddha pointed out a truth that is both simple and profoundly deep. Everything in life is impermanent. Joy, sadness, anger, or any state of mind are only temporary guests who come and go. There is a story in the scriptures where a king once asked a wise sage, "Give me a saying that when I am happy, it will humble me, and when I am sad, it will comfort me." The sage wrote on a card, "This too shall pass." The king pondered and nodded. Indeed, when happy, remembering that joy will also pass helps us treasure it without clinging. When sad or angry, remembering that the feeling will also pass prevents us from being overwhelmed. In anger, we often want to react immediately, but if we pause, breathe deeply, and remind ourselves, "This anger too shall pass," the mind naturally cools down. This practice is like standing on the riverbank, watching muddy water rushing by, knowing that soon the water will clear again. Anger is the same. It cannot last if we do not keep adding fuel to the fire. Once, a friend told me that whenever she argued with her husband, she would leave the room, go elsewhere, and breathe for a few minutes. She said, "I know if I stay and keep arguing, I will say hurtful things that I will regret later. But if I step out, breathe, I see clearly that anger is just a passing cloud. When the cloud is gone, I can talk calmly again." Impermanence not only cools anger, but also broadens our outlook on life. Seeing that everything changes, we cling less to the idea of "I am right and the other is wrong." A harsh word, an unpleasant action, all will soon be in the past. If we keep holding on to them, we are tying ourselves with ropes that have already rotted. A Zen master once said, "When you understand impermanence, you will no longer want to hold on to hatred, for holding on to it is as useless as trying to keep ice in your hand on a summer's day." Imagine holding a block of ice and being angry that it melts. That is the nature of ice. It melts. Likewise, the nature of emotions is to change, impossible to hold onto. In modern life, we can apply contemplation of impermanence in many ways. When someone offends us, instead of reacting, ask, "In 3 days, will I still feel this angry?" If the answer is no, why let a fleeting emotion ruin your peace now? Another method is to write down your feelings on paper, noting why you are angry, and leave it aside for a few days. When you return to read it, you will find the emotion has cooled greatly, and sometimes the reason for the anger no longer feels important. This is a way to see impermanence in your own experience, not just as an abstract concept. Reflecting on impermanence also reminds us that life is too short to waste on anger. Every passing moment is a part of our life gone forever. If we spend too much time feeding resentment, we will look back and realize how many beautiful moments we missed that could have been enjoyed with loved ones, friends, and ourselves. The Buddha once said, "Do not let a single day pass without cultivating happiness." Each time anger arises, let us ask, "Am I using the precious time of my life to feed this?" That question alone can wake us up and help us release. When we truly absorb impermanence, we see anger as just a passing guest. No need to roll out the red carpet and no need to drive it away forcefully. Simply recognize it, smile, and let it go. One of the common mistakes when we are angry is to focus only on the external object, the person who said or did something upsetting. We often think if that person changes or if the situation were different, we would stop being angry. But the Buddha taught that anger does not only come from outside, but mostly from within our own mind. If the mind is like a garden, the seeds of anger already exist within each of us. When an external condition, a hurtful word, an unjust act arises, those seeds are watered and sprout. If within us there are fewer of these seeds, or if the soil of our mind has been cultivated with compassion and understanding, then no matter how strong the outside storm, anger will struggle to arise. A Zen master once shared that when insulted, he did not react immediately. He sat quietly and asked himself, "Why do these words hurt me so much? What within me is being touched?" This question helped him realize the pain was not only from the words, but because his ego was wounded. Seeing this clearly, he blamed the other less and turned instead to care for his own wound. Observing oneself does not mean blaming oneself. It is an act of mindfulness, allowing us to see the true roots of our feelings. For example, if we are angry because a colleague does not acknowledge our effort, beneath it may be the fear of being abandoned or the sense of not being valued. Recognizing this helps us know how to heal. In modern life, self-observation is even more crucial. We live in environments full of pressure, overwhelming work, constant stimulation from social media, little rest. Without turning inward, we are easily swept into reactive cycles. Anger leads to words, irritation leads to actions. Without realizing we are being controlled by our emotions. A simple practice is to spend a few minutes each day sitting quietly, closing your eyes, focusing on your breath, and asking yourself, "How did I feel today? When was I angry? At whom? And why?" Writing these down will reveal recurring emotional patterns. Many people are surprised to discover they often get angry for the same reasons, just in different contexts. Observing oneself is like looking into a mirror. At first, we may not like what we see, selfishness, pride, or fears we have buried, but only when we dare to look can we change. A mirror does not judge our face, it only reflects. The observing mind is the same. It simply sees and acknowledges, without blame or condemnation. When we practice looking inward long enough, we realize something interesting. Often others are only the trigger for the anger already inside us. They are like someone who accidentally touches a wound, but that wound was already there. If we only blame them, we miss the chance to heal ourselves. But if we turn inward to care for that wound, with understanding and compassion for ourselves, we will gradually react less intensely to similar situations. The Buddha once taught, conquering thousands in battle is not as great as conquering oneself. That victory is the greatest of all. Observing oneself is the path to that victory. Not victory over others, but victory over the waves of emotion within. One reason anger lingers and escalates is our need to prove ourselves right. Once convinced of our correctness, we feel compelled to defend it at all costs. But in the Buddha's teachings, there is a vital principle. Place peace and love above winning and losing. For when we win an argument, we may triumph in reason, but in feelings, we may lose because we damage connection and trust. A short Zen story illustrates this. Two monks were walking and encountered a young woman unable to cross a muddy road. One monk carried her across, then continued walking. That evening, the other monk said, "How could you carry a woman like that? We are monks." The first monk smiled. "I put her down back at the road, but you are still carrying her." This story reminds us that when we cling to being right or to principles, we may unknowingly cause suffering for ourselves and others. In life, right and wrong are not always clear. Even when we are right, insisting on imposing our correctness often increases distance. Countless relationships have fractured over a single phrase, "I told you so," or "I'm right you're wrong. B. Behind the need to be right is often the ego's craving for recognition and to prove its worth. But if we calmly reflect, we realize our value does not depend on others acknowledging our viewpoint. In Buddhism, letting go of the need to be right does not mean accepting falsehood or abandoning wisdom. On the contrary, it is a sign of deep wisdom, wisdom that sees happiness and harmony as more important than victory. When conflict arises, if the other person is angry, we can step back, yield, and not lose dignity. Yielding is not weakness. It is the strength to choose peace. I once knew a friend, a manager, highly skilled but hot-tempered. At first, he always wanted employees to follow his way, convinced he was right. But he noticed that every time he imposed, the workplace atmosphere grew tense. Efficiency dropped and relationships cracked. He then changed. When disagreements arose, he listened more, sought common ground, and was willing to say, "Maybe your way is good too, let's try it." The result was better cooperation, and he himself felt more at ease. In practice, we can ask, do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? This question helps us reflect on our motives. Often, letting go of being right opens space for dialogue, where both sides feel respected. Another method is to look at consequences. Suppose today we argue fiercely to prove ourselves right, and we win. But afterward, the relationship grows cold. Was that victory worth it? The Buddha taught, in a battle, no one truly wins, not even the victor. For even in victory, wounds remain, either for ourselves or for the other. Letting go of the need to be right is also letting go of anger. When we no longer cling to our stance, we open to seeing the issue from many angles. We may realize the other also has reasons, born of their experiences, circumstances, or fears. With this understanding, instead of wanting to defeat them, we want to find solutions with them. In modern life, letting go of being right is difficult, especially with social media where arguments abound. But we can start small. When debating with friends or family, try once saying, "I understand your point," instead of immediately rebutting. Or when seeing someone wrong, instead of rushing to correct, consider whether it is truly necessary at that moment. There is a saying, sometimes silence is not because you have nothing to say, but because you know not everything needs to be said. Choosing silence when needed is not defeat. It is an inner victory, victory over ego, victory over anger, and the preservation of peace. There is a truth few recognize. When we are angry at someone, in that moment, we forget that they too are a human being suffering. Anger is like a thick curtain blocking the light of compassion, making us see only faults and hurtful actions, without seeing their pain, vulnerability, or circumstances. The Buddha taught that only when we rekindle compassion can anger truly dissolve, just as darkness cannot remain when light appears. Compassion is not weakness or indulgence of wrong. Compassion is the ability to see others suffering, to understand that their negative actions often arise from pain, fear, or ignorance. When we see this, our heart softens and anger subsides. A teacher once shared that when insulted harshly, instead of reacting, he thought, "This person must be suffering greatly to say such things." Instantly, he no longer felt offended, but felt compassion. In modern life, compassion is even more precious. Competition, work pressure, financial concerns, health, relationships, all make people irritable, stressed, and reactive. If we understand that behind each unpleasant act is an untold story, we will approach differently. For example, when a colleague seems grumpy, instead of labeling them difficult, we can ask, what might they have gone through today? This loving curiosity changes how we respond. One way to practice compassion is through visualization. When you are angry at someone, close your eyes and picture them as a frightened, lost child, or as someone crying in pain. Send them a silent wish. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. At first, you may not genuinely feel this way, but with continued practice, your heart will gradually open. Anger and love cannot coexist for long in the same mind. Once compassion grows, anger will naturally retreat. In the scriptures, the Buddha once taught the story of a bodhisattva who encountered a violent robber. Instead of feeling only fear or anger, the bodhisattva saw that in many past lives, this robber had once been a friend, a relative, and had also endured deep suffering. Because of this vision, he did not give rise to hatred, but to compassion. That compassion not only protected him from anger, but also touched the robber's heart, who abandoned his harmful intentions. Practicing compassion in daily life does not require grand gestures. Sometimes it is as simple as holding back a harsh word, smiling at a server even if they are slow, or listening to someone pour out their troubles without judgment. Each small act is like a drop of cool water nourishing the seed of compassion within us. When that seed grows strong enough, it becomes a solid shield that protects us from being swept away by anger. It is also important to remember that compassion must not only be directed outward but also inward, toward ourselves. Many people are kind to others but overly harsh on themselves, blaming and judging whenever they make mistakes or lose their temper. But if we cannot be gentle with ourselves, how can we be gentle with others? When we lose our calm, we can remind ourselves, I too am learning. I too need time to grow. Self-compassion allows us to stand up more quickly after each fall. When compassion becomes a habit, we see anger as nothing more than a passing cloud, while love is the vast, boundless sky. A cloud may block the sun for a while, but it cannot cover it forever. Compassion is the sun, always present, waiting for us to push aside the clouds so its light can shine through. If we look closely, we see that no emotion lasts forever. Joy, sorrow, worry, happiness, they all come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. Anger is the same. It is not our true nature, only a temporary visitor. The problem is that we often forget this. So when we are angry, we think it will last forever, and this belief makes us hold on to it longer than necessary. In Buddhist teaching, impermanence is one of the 3 Dharma seals, the marks of all phenomena. Everything changes, nothing is fixed. When we deeply understand this, we no longer foolishly build our homes on waves of emotion. We know that feelings like the weather shift and pass. Rain will stop, storms will calm. Anger, too, will fade, so long as we do not keep feeding it with thoughts and memories. A simple example, when we pour a cup of hot tea, steam rises thickly. But if we leave it alone, without stirring or adding boiling water, the tea will gradually cool. Anger works the same way. If we do not add fuel by replaying the story, analyzing others' faults, or retelling the injustice to ourselves again and again, it will naturally cool down. But usually, we keep stirring, so anger lasts hours, even years. In meditation, there is a practice called looking deeply into the nature of emotions. When anger arises, instead of reacting immediately, we take a deep breath and acknowledge, this is anger. Simply naming it creates space between me and my anger. Then we observe the breath and feel anger as a wave. It rises, peaks, and eventually recedes. Knowing its impermanent nature, we stop fearing it or trying to push it away instantly. We just sit and let it pass. I once heard a Zen master tell the story of a student who was very hot-tempered. Every time he was angry, he felt like he was on fire and out of control. The teacher told him, each time you're angry, imagine you are a great mountain and the anger is just a passing cloud. The mountain does not need to chase away the cloud nor fear it. It simply stands firm and lets it drift by. After some time practicing this, the student found his anger no longer controlled him as before, because he knew it would pass. Reflecting on impermanence also helps us realize that if all emotions can change, then the person who angers us today can also change tomorrow. This opens the door to forgiveness. If we believe someone is always like this, we close the possibility of change. But remembering impermanence, we know everyone can improve, and so can we. In modern life, impermanence is everywhere. The new phone grows old, jobs shift. Loved ones today may leave tomorrow. Accepting impermanence does not make us pessimistic. It helps us cherish each moment. Knowing anger is impermanent keeps us from making regrettable choices based on temporary emotions. One practical method to reflect on impermanence when angry is to remind ourselves, this feeling will also pass. Write it on a note, post it where you can see it, or save it in your phone. Each time anger arises, look at it as a reminder. Time naturally softens emotions, but mindfulness can help them fade faster. When we truly live with impermanence, we are no longer swept away by emotions. We are like someone standing on the riverbank, watching the water flow by, knowing that no drop remains forever. And the wonderful thing is, when anger has passed, the peaceful space it leaves behind is wider than ever. Breathing is a miracle we often forget. It has been with us since our first cry at birth and will leave only with our last breath. Through all life's storms, the breath is always present. Yet because it is so familiar, we often overlook it. The Buddha taught that the breath is the anchor that steadies us in the storms of emotion, especially when anger surges. When anger erupts, the body reacts immediately. The heart beats faster, breathing becomes shallow and rapid, muscles tense. If unnoticed, these reactions feed the emotion, making it stronger. By returning to the breath, we break this chain. Each slow, deep breath reminds us that we are still here, safe, and need not be swept away by the storm in the mind. Breathing also has the power to bring us back to the present. Anger usually arises when we dwell too much on the past, he hurt me, or the future, she will surely mistreat me again. Focusing on the breath anchors us in this moment and in the present. Anger cannot survive long without fuel. A simple yet highly effective exercise is the 4-4-6 breath. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold the breath for 4 counts, then exhale gently for 6 counts. When the exhale is longer than the inhale, the nervous system relaxes, helping the body step out of tension. Repeat 5 to 10 times and you will clearly feel your anger subside. Someone once asked, "But when I'm angry, I can't even remember to breathe. So how can I apply this?" The answer is, practice when you are not angry. Just as a martial artist trains every day so that in battle the moves come naturally, you must practice breathing daily so that when strong emotions arise, returning to the breath becomes a reflex. In the Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of breathing, the Buddha taught that by simply focusing on the breath, we can recognize and transform all mental states. This applies not only to anger, but also to worry, sadness, or fear. The breath is the bridge between body and mind, between turbulence and peace. I recall a story of a Zen master. One day, while giving a Dharma talk, he was harshly challenged by someone in the audience. Instead of responding immediately, he paused, closed his eyes, and took 3 deep breaths. Just 3 breaths. But when he opened his eyes, his voice was calm and gentle. He later shared that without those 3 breaths, he might have spoken words he would regret. The breath is like a gentle friend, always waiting for us to return. No matter how far we stray, whenever we come back, it welcomes us with softness. Just 1 minute of mindful breathing opens a space in the heart, giving anger the chance to dissolve. And once we are familiar with returning to the breath, we realize that not only anger but all negative emotions can be transformed in this way. This is the foundation of a peaceful life, where we are no longer dragged by emotions, but become masters of our own mind. We often think that practice belongs only to temples, to quiet meditation retreats, or to days when life is free of disturbances. But in truth, the real value of practice is when we can bring peace into our busy, noisy, and challenging daily lives. It is precisely in the midst of conflict that practice is tested and proven. Workplaces, families, and social relationships can all become stages where strong emotions appear. A critical comment from a boss, a tactless remark from a colleague, or a disagreement with a loved one, each can ignite irritation. The issue is not to avoid all these situations, but to remain steady when facing them. The first thing to remember is not to react immediately. When someone does something against our will, our instinct is to resist, defend, or counterattack. But as the Buddha taught, impulsive reactions often arise from an unmindful mind. We can train ourselves to pause, even just a few seconds, to take a deep breath. Recall one of the 10 methods of emotional restraint, and let that pause act as a cushion, preventing anger from exploding. Another practice is reflecting on causes and conditions. When someone gets angry at us, we can ask, what makes them react this way? Are they under pressure? Do they carry fear or insecurity? Placing ourselves in their shoes helps us see deeper causes and judge less. This is not excusing behavior, but looking with understanding. And when we understand, our hearts soften. In families, conflicts carry stronger emotions because of attachment and expectations. A careless word from a loved one can wound more than criticism from a stranger. That is why deep listening is essential. Listening not only with the ears, but with the heart. When loved ones speak, listen fully without interrupting or preparing to argue. Sometimes simply being heard completely is the first step toward cooling tensions. In the workplace, another skill is knowing when to let go of what is unnecessary. Not every battle must be fought, not every opinion needs to be argued to the end. The Buddha taught that choosing to walk away from a pointless quarrel is also a victory over oneself. When we no longer waste energy proving we are right, we preserve strength for what truly matters. A very helpful method is carrying the breath and a smile. The breath connects us to the present, and the gentle smile reminds us we are here, mindful, and not controlled by anger. You can try this in a tense meeting. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly, and smile lightly. Just this, and the mind calms, changing the way you respond. The key is daily practice, not waiting until conflict arises. Just as soldiers do not wait until battle to train, we must cultivate mindfulness in ordinary moments, so that when emotional storms come, we have the strength to stand firm. Peace amidst conflict does not mean the absence of problems, but keeping clarity to deal with them without losing ourselves. When we manage this, every conflict becomes a lesson, every challenge an opportunity for practice. When speaking of negative emotions like anger, sadness, disappointment, or jealousy, we often see them as enemies, something to eliminate as quickly as possible. Yet the Buddha did not teach us to suppress or deny them, but to recognize, understand, and transform them. For emotions are energy, and energy can be directed, either destructive or nourishing. Think of emotions as water. When flowing violently, it can sweep everything away. But if channeled, that same water can irrigate fields, turn wheels, or generate electricity. Negative emotions are the same. If left unchecked, they cause harm. But if guided, they can become a force for positive change. The first step in transformation is acknowledging the presence of the emotion. This sounds simple but is difficult, for many people's habit is to avoid or suppress. We must say to ourselves, I am angry, I am sad, I am disappointed. Naming the emotion pulls us out of full identification with it. When we know we are angry, mindfulness is already present, and that is the beginning of transformation. The next step is to look deeply into the cause. Our anger or sadness may seem to come from a present event, but often its roots lie in old wounds or unmet expectations. For example, when a colleague criticizes us, we may get angry not only because of their words, but also because deep inside we fear being undervalued or losing worth. Understanding these deeper causes helps us address the true roots, rather than just reacting to the surface. Once we understand the cause, we can redirect the energy of our emotions. Instead of letting anger push us into saying or doing something harmful, we can turn it into determination to improve something. For example, if you feel frustrated by unfairness at work, use that energy to give constructive feedback or to improve the process. If you feel sadness because of a cold relationship, let it be motivation to reconnect or to nourish yourself more deeply. Another method is to channel emotions into creativity. Many artists, writers, and musicians have transformed their pain and loss into profound works that touch millions of hearts. You don't have to be an artist. You can journal, paint, plant a garden, cook, any activity that allows emotional energy to be released and transformed into something meaningful. The Buddha taught that seeds of compassion and wisdom often sprout in the very soil of suffering. Without having known anger, we might not truly understand or empathize with the anger of others. Without having experienced loss, we might not deeply value what we still have. Negative emotions, when transformed, can become the material that nourishes compassion and growth. Of course, this process takes time and patience. No one can, overnight, transform all anger and sorrow into peace. What matters is practicing daily. Recognize, look deeply, redirect. Each time we succeed, even just a little, we take one more step on the path of mastering our emotions. And when we look back, we will see that the very emotions that once caused us suffering have been our greatest teachers, showing us how to cherish peace, love more fully, and live more mindfully. In life, there are wounds that still sting when remembered. A hurtful word, an act of betrayal or abandonment. We often think forgiveness is a gift for the one who hurt us, but in truth, forgiveness is first and foremost a gift to ourselves. When we hold on to anger, hatred, or resentment, it's like carrying a heavy stone on our back. That stone not only exhausts us, but makes each step harder. Many people think clinging to anger punishes the other, but in reality, the one who suffers most is ourselves. The Buddha once taught that holding on to hatred is like holding a burning coal to throw at another. Before we can throw it, our own hand is already burned. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or denying what happened. It does not mean condoning wrong actions. Forgiveness simply means deciding not to let that wound continue to control our emotions and our life. It is letting go, releasing the need to retaliate, releasing the demand to see the other suffer. The first step to forgiveness is understanding that all actions arise from causes and conditions. The one who hurt us is also the product of their environment, of wounds they themselves have suffered. This does not excuse their actions, but it helps us see that if we had been born and raised under exactly the same conditions, we might have acted the same. This understanding opens the door to compassion. The next step is looking back at ourselves. Surely, in life, we too have, at times, intentionally or not, hurt someone else. When we realize we are not perfect either, we become less harsh toward others. Forgiveness then is no longer an act of generosity, but a recognition of shared humanity, of people learning, stumbling, and growing. A practice many meditation masters recommend is loving kindness meditation for forgiveness. Sit quietly, breathe deeply, and imagine the person who hurt you standing before you. At first, you may feel uncomfortable or resistant, but stay with it. then silently send them wishes. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you find the right path. Repeat until these wishes no longer feel forced. Forgiveness takes time. Some wounds may need months or even years to heal. What matters is persistence, not forcing ourselves, but also not giving up. Each time the anger lessens, each time resentment softens, we move one step further. When true forgiveness happens, something miraculous is felt. The heart becomes lighter. Old memories may remain, but they no longer weigh us down. We can recall them without pain, mention them without bitterness. Then we realize forgiveness is not just about freeing the other, but freeing ourselves from the prison of our own emotions. But just as after a storm the sky clears, new storms can arise if conditions remain. Likewise, even after forgiveness, anger may return if we do not continue to nourish peace. That is why daily practice is essential. Nurturing peace begins with mindfulness in daily life. Mindfulness is like a gatekeeper, alert to the arrival of negative thoughts. With mindfulness, we can recognize a hurtful word, a painful memory, or a trigger for anger, and choose another response before being swept away. Another effective method for maintaining peace is gratitude. Each morning, instead of rushing into work, take a few minutes to acknowledge things you are grateful for: your health, family, shelter, or simply the gift of another day to live. Gratitude shifts attention from dissatisfaction to appreciation, fostering positivity and stability. Compassion also strengthens inner peace. When compassion grows, the triggers for anger lose their power. We see others suffering more than their faults. A harsh word becomes an invitation to listen more deeply. A hostile act becomes a question. Where is this person hurting that they must act this way? Finally, environment matters. If we constantly expose ourselves to negativity, judgmental conversations, or people who nurture anger, inner peace is hard to sustain. But spending more time with inspiring people in quiet spaces or in activities that feed the soul, like reading, meditation, or walking in nature, builds a strong foundation of peace. The Buddha once taught that the mind is like a garden. If we only pull out the weeds without planting flowers, the weeds will eventually return. Forgiveness is pulling out the weeds, while cultivating inner peace is planting flowers. When the garden of our heart is filled with the flowers of joy, gratitude, compassion, and mindfulness, then the weeds of anger and hatred have no ground to grow. What matters is consistent practice. Peace is not a fixed destination, but a state that must be nurtured through small daily actions. Each deep breath we take, when we are about to lose our temper, each time we choose silence over arguing, each smile we offer to a stranger, all are seeds of peace being cultivated. When peace of mind becomes a habit, we notice a profound change. What once triggered anger now feels like passing wind. Those who once caused us pain no longer hold power over our emotions. At that point, we not only preserve peace for ourselves, but also radiate it to those around us. If today's sharing touched you, helping you see how to protect your calm in the midst of turmoil and soften your moments of anger, please leave a like as encouragement to continue spreading these precious teachings. And don't forget to subscribe to Dharma in Motion, so whenever a new story or teaching is shared, you'll be among the first to hear it. Each subscription you give sets the Dharma wheel turning, carrying the light of wisdom and compassion closer to all. See you again in the next part, where we will continue walking together on the path of mindfulness and peace. In a noisy world where everyone seems eager to speak, debate, and assert their opinions, silence is sometimes the most precious gift. Silence is not weakness or avoidance, but an inner strength that keeps us from being swept into the whirlpool of conflict and negativity. The Buddha once said, "When words bring no benefit, silence is best. This is not silence born of fear, but silence of wisdom and compassion, silence that protects our peace and that of others. Sometimes one sharp reply is enough to ignite a fire of conflict, while a moment of silence can extinguish the spark. Silence is powerful because it creates space for observation. In silence, we have time to notice our rising emotions, to see the roots of our anger or irritation. This pause is like a brake that prevents impulsive reactions. Many have regretted words spoken in haste, words they might not have said if they had allowed silence to lead first. An everyday example. When insulted, our natural instinct is to snap back. But if we remain silent, breathe deeply, and refrain from speaking right away, the anger has a chance to subside. Once the mind settles, if a response is needed, it will come with more kindness and clarity. This is why many teachers advise delaying reactions. Silence is not just not speaking, it is giving the mind a pause to choose wisely. Silence itself can also be a powerful message. We don't always need to argue to prove we are right. Sometimes silence makes the other reflect. Just as still water reflects the sky, our silence can cause others to see themselves more clearly. In practice, silence also brings us back within. When we meditate in silence without distraction from speech or action, we finally hear our own inner voice. Many people only discover their unhealed emotions when they turn off phones, televisions, and step away from the crowd. However, silence must be used wisely. If we stay silent only to suppress emotions, without expressing when necessary, they will eventually explode. True silence is mindful. It listens, observes, and then chooses the right time to speak with calmness and goodwill. A way to practice the power of silence is to set aside 5 to 10 minutes daily to turn off all devices, speak to no one, and simply observe the breath. This time helps us reconnect with ourselves, allowing the mind to rest and recharge. Practiced regularly, it brings calm when facing difficulties and helps us know when to speak and when to remain silent. Silence not only preserves inner peace, but also radiates it outward. One person holding calm silence can influence the atmosphere of a whole room, making others feel more at ease. This is the unseen yet very real strength of silence. If silence is the doorway into our own inner world, then deep listening is the bridge into another's. In today's world, everyone wants to be heard, but few truly know how to listen. We often listen to reply, to argue, or to wait for our turn to speak, not to truly understand. Deep listening is listening with the heart, not just the ears. It means setting aside judgment, suspending preformed responses, and opening ourselves to what the other is sharing, both the spoken words and the unspoken pain. It is an act of compassion because to listen deeply is to offer the greatest gift, our full presence. The Buddha taught that some sufferings can only be healed when someone listens without judgment. Like a pot filled with boiling water, if we pour in more boiling water, it spills and burns. But if left to settle, the heat fades. Humans are the same. When truly heard, anger and pain begin to soften. Deep listening is not just for others, but also for ourselves. Sometimes we live so hurriedly that we miss our own fatigue, anxiety, or fear. Listening inwardly, paying attention to emotions, breath, and the body's signals helps us understand ourselves better and take care of ourselves more wisely. To listen deeply, inner silence is essential. Even if we are not speaking, if our mind is noisy with thoughts and worries, we cannot truly listen. So before listening to someone, take a deep breath, release preoccupations, and turn your whole attention toward them. Listening without judgment is the next step. When someone is sharing, do not rush to label them as right or wrong, good or bad. The purpose of deep listening is not to draw conclusions, but to understand the feelings and needs behind their words. Their actions may not be correct, but if we can see the suffering they are going through, we will know how to respond with greater compassion. Another key element is responding with empathy. Deep listening does not mean remaining silent the entire time. Sometimes a simple phrase such as, "I understand how you feel," or "I hear what you're saying and it sounds difficult," can make the other person feel seen and acknowledged. These are not empty reassurances, but affirmations that they are truly being listened to. In family life, deep listening is the key to healing fractures. A husband returning home after a long, tiring day, if met with listening rather than blame, will feel lighter. A child who is listened to without being compared will be more open to share. And in society, if people practice listening more, there would be far fewer misunderstandings and conflicts. Deep listening is also a way to dissolve anger. When someone is angry, instead of arguing back, let them express themselves fully and listen in silence with compassion. Anger is like fire. It flares up with the wind, but when it meets the still surface of a lake, it extinguishes. Our listening presence can be that still lake. Ultimately, deep listening is not merely a skill, but a long-term practice. It requires patience, presence, and compassion. But when practiced regularly, it becomes a natural part of how we live and love. If deep listening is the way we open our hearts to receive others, then loving speech is the bridge that brings the best within us to them. Words hold immense power. They can uplift or wound, soothe pain, or deepen suffering. That is why the Buddha emphasized right speech in the Noble Eightfold Path. Speech that is truthful, harmonious, beneficial, and filled with love. Loving speech does not mean using flowery words to flatter or conceal the truth. Rather, it is speaking sincerely, from compassion, with the intention to bring benefit and happiness to the listener. A simple word, if spoken with genuine care, can remain in someone's heart for a lifetime. There is a story of a disciple who came to the Buddha complaining about another member of the Sangha. He wanted to speak up about what he saw as wrong, but feared it would be considered divisive. The Buddha smiled and taught, "Before speaking, ask yourself 3 things. Is it true? Is it beneficial? Is it spoken with a compassionate heart? If all 3 are present, speak. If even one is missing, remain silent." This is the essence of loving speech, not just to convey information, but to nurture understanding and harmony. In modern life, we are often carried away by hasty words. When upset, we easily criticize. When disappointed, we may lash out with hurtful remarks. But if we practice loving speech, we pause, asking whether our words will help the other grow or only make them suffer more. Often, a simple change in phrasing transforms the energy. For example, instead of saying, "You're always late," we can say, "I wish you'd come earlier so we could spend more time together." The problem remains acknowledged, but conveyed with care rather than blame. Loving speech includes tone, facial expression, and delivery. A sentence meant to be kind can feel harsh if said curtly. Conversely, even a serious suggestion is easier to receive when spoken gently and calmly. Thus, in practicing loving speech, we must be mindful not only of what we say, but how we say it. Loving speech is also a mindfulness practice. We must be aware of our emotions before speaking and aware of the impact our words will have. Every word we speak is like a seed planted in the listener's heart. Being mindful helps us choose which seeds to plant. One simple way to practice loving speech is through gratitude and encouragement. Whether in the family, at work, or in society, genuine acknowledgement nurtures connection. A simple, "Thank you for helping me with this," or "I appreciate your effort," can make someone feel valued. This is not mere politeness, but nourishment for relationships. However, loving speech does not mean avoiding truth or refusing to address mistakes. It means delivering truth skillfully, so the listener can receive it without feeling attacked. Like a doctor sweetening bitter medicine with honey, we can wrap our words of correction with respect and goodwill, making them easier to accept. Loving speech and deep listening are the twin wings of mindful communication. With deep listening, we understand the joys and sufferings of others. With loving speech, we share that understanding in ways that nurture. Together they support one another. Deep listening makes our words more accurate and compassionate, while loving speech makes our listening more complete. Anger is a natural human emotion. No one can say they have never felt it. But the issue is not whether we get angry, but how we face and handle that anger. Like fire, it can warm and cook when controlled, but it will destroy everything if left unchecked. Anger, too, if unrecognized and untransformed, will cause suffering first to ourselves, then to others. The Buddha taught that when we are angry at someone, it is like holding a burning coal to throw at them. Our hand is burned first. Anger scorches our mind, blinds our clarity, and leaves behind consequences we may regret for a lifetime. That is why the essential step is to recognize anger as soon as it arises. Mindfulness is the lamp that illuminates emotions as they surface. When the face flushes, the heart races, and the breath shortens, these are signs of anger. Instead of reacting immediately, we can stop and breathe deeply. A few mindful breaths can prevent us from being swept away by the storm of emotion. Anger is like a dark cloud that suddenly gathers. If we refrain from acting hastily, it will pass. There are many ways to practice transforming anger. One simple yet effective method is to return to the breath. When we feel anger rising, focus on breathing in deeply and breathing out slowly. Each breath is an anchor keeping us from being swept away. Silently, we can say, breathing in, I know I am angry. Breathing out, I smile to my anger. With just a few minutes of this, we can feel the mind calming. Another way is to change your environment. If circumstances allow, step outside, take a walk, or find a quiet space. Physical distance can create emotional distance, giving you clarity to see things more clearly. Equally important is shifting perspective. Often we get angry because we believe the other person deliberately tried to hurt us. But if we look deeper, we may realize they acted that way because they themselves are suffering. A happy and peaceful person does not seek to harm others. When we understand this, anger lessens and compassion arises. In relationships, instead of trying to win an argument, set the goal of understanding each other better. Winning in words but losing in affection comes at a heavy cost. If needed, you can say to the other, I'm angry right now, and I fear if we continue talking, I might hurt you. Let's pause and return to this when we're both calmer. This is not avoidance, but giving both sides time to settle down. Practicing mindfulness does not make anger disappear forever, but it prevents anger from controlling us. Each time we recognize and embrace anger with mindfulness, its power diminishes. Like a small fire surrounded by cool water, it gradually goes out. One thing to remember is that transforming anger is not only for the benefit of others, but also for protecting ourselves. Living in constant anger damages health, disrupts sleep, and weighs down the mind. Conversely, learning to let go makes us lighter, happier, and improves our relationships. In life, everyone at some point is hurt by someone's words or actions, betrayal, misunderstanding, or insults that cut deep. The natural reaction is to fight back or hold on to resentment as a shield. But holding resentment is like clutching a hot coal, hoping the other will be burned. Yet we are the ones burned first. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting everything or condoning wrongful behavior. Forgiveness is laying down the burden we've carried too long, freeing our hearts. The Buddha taught, hatred is never appeased by hatred. It is only appeased by love. Forgiveness is not a gift to others, but liberation for ourselves from the prison of anger and pain. Some spend their entire lives unable to forgive, believing it shows weakness or allows the other to win. In truth, forgiveness is an act of strength. Only a resilient heart dares release the past and move forward. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it changes the future. A short story. A woman once felt betrayed by her best friend. For years, she lived in bitterness and distrust of others. One day, during a Dharma talk, she heard, "Letting go is not because they deserve peace, but because you deserve peace." That sentence awakened her. She realized that holding on to hatred only prolonged her suffering, while the other had already moved on. She began practicing forgiveness, not to rekindle friendship, but to set her heart free. Forgiveness begins with understanding. When we see the deeper causes behind others' actions, our hearts soften. Often they too are victims of circumstances, ignorance, or unhealed wounds. Seeing this, we move from blame to compassion. Forgiveness must also be practiced toward ourselves. Many are trapped in the past, unable to forgive themselves for mistakes, wrong decisions, or missed opportunities. Without self-forgiveness, we remain bound in guilt and regret. Remember, each day is a chance to start anew, and mistakes are part of learning. Forgiving ourselves opens the door to growth. To practice forgiveness, try a few steps. First, recognize the emotion. Acknowledge you are angry, hurt, or sad. Next, understand the cause. Ask why the other acted that way, what circumstances they were in. Finally, let go, not by denying feelings, but by accepting what happened and refusing to let it control the present. Forgiveness is a journey, not an instant decision. Today, you may only feel slightly less angry, but over time, with persistence, the burden lightens. One day you will see the old wound has healed, and you can smile at the memory. In life, we hold tightly to many things, from tangible possessions like money and property, to intangible ones like reputation, expectations, and relationships. Ironically, the tighter we grip, the more afraid we become of losing. The more we hold, the heavier our hearts. Letting go does not mean abandoning everything and retreating from life, but learning to release what no longer serves our peace and happiness. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in attachment, clinging to what is impermanent. Everything changes. Autumn cannot hold on to its leaves. Spring cannot keep flowers forever in bloom. And humans cannot hold on to what they love indefinitely. When we understand impermanence, we see that letting go is not loss, but acceptance of life's truth. A Zen story tells of two monks walking when they met a young woman unable to cross a river's swift current. The elder monk carried her across and continued walking. That evening, the younger monk could no longer hold back and asked, "Brother, why did you carry a woman? Did you break the precepts?" The elder smiled. "I put her down when we crossed the river, but you've been carrying her all this way." We too often hold on to things long gone, burdening ourselves unnecessarily. Letting go requires courage. Courage to accept we cannot control everything, cannot cling to what has passed. Courage to live fully in the present instead of being ruled by past or future. Many fear that letting go means losing all. In truth, only by letting go do we have empty hands to receive the new. In modern life, letting go also means simplifying consumption, releasing self-imposed pressures, and ceasing endless comparisons with others. Many suffer because they constantly measure themselves against other lives, feeling inadequate. When we let go of comparison, we can live true to ourselves. Practicing letting go begins with small steps. Clear a corner of your home. Discard items long unused. Say no to things that exhaust you. Forgive someone or yourself. Each act of release is a step toward freedom, opening the heart wider. When we let go, something miraculous happens. We feel light, serene, and filled with freedom. No longer bound by what has passed, we can walk gently through life, welcoming everything with a peaceful heart. There is a simple truth that many forget. Life truly happens only in the present moment. The past is gone, the future has not yet come. Yet most of the time, we let our minds wander to those distant lands. We regret what is lost, worry about what has not happened, and forget that each passing moment is also a part of life that will never return. The Buddha once taught, "Do not chase after the past. Do not long for the future. Only the present Dharma is the place of abiding." This does not mean we cannot remember the past or plan for the future, but that we should not let them consume our minds and cause us to miss the life right before our eyes. Once, someone asked a Zen master, "What is the secret to happiness?" He replied, "When I eat, I know I am eating. When I walk, I know I am walking. When I work, I know I am working." It sounds simple, but how many of us truly live this way? How many times have you eaten while thinking about work? How many times have you been with your family while your mind was elsewhere? When the mind wanders, we are not really living, only existing. Living fully in the present is the practice of mindfulness, bringing the mind back to what is happening without judgment or escape. When washing dishes, we feel the water flow through our hands, hear its gentle sound, and see the light reflecting on the soap bubbles. When walking, we feel each step touch the earth, hear the rustle of leaves, and take a deep breath. These seemingly ordinary acts can bring peace when we are truly present. In modern life, to live fully in the present, we must learn to reduce distractions. Phones, social media, and constant news pull our minds away. Try setting aside moments each day to turn off devices, breathe deeply, and listen to yourself. Just a few minutes is enough to quiet the mind. When we are present, we truly experience life's beauty. A simple meal with family becomes precious. An afternoon watching clouds drift by is enough to bring peace. Happiness is not far away. It is found in the simple things we usually overlook. Living in the present also helps us face suffering. When sad, instead of avoiding it, we can stay with the feeling, observing it like rain, knowing it will come, stay for a while, and then pass. Only by being with suffering mindfully can we learn from it and let it go gently. As you begin living in the present, you realize you need less to be happy. No longer chasing too many things, you have more time to love, to enjoy, and to truly live. Living fully in the present also reveals countless treasures around us, and one of the deepest sources of happiness is gratitude. Gratitude is not just polite words, but a state of mind, where we see what we have as priceless gifts, no matter how small. The Buddha taught, "A grateful person is a happy person." This may sound simple, but it contains profound wisdom. When the heart is full of gratitude, there is no room for complaints or dissatisfaction. Gratitude transforms what we have into enough and turns difficulties into opportunities to learn. There is a story of a monk who complained to his teacher, "I see nothing to be grateful for. My life is full of hardships." The teacher smiled, handed him a glass of water, and said, "Imagine this is the last gift you'll ever receive. How would you drink it?" The monk silently took a slow sip, feeling the coolness spread through his body. The teacher said, "Your life is the same. Each day is a gift. If you cherish it, you will find happiness even in the simplest things." In modern life, many forget gratitude because they are caught in the cycle of wanting more. They compare themselves to others, thinking happiness comes only when achieving something great. But the truth is, right now, you already have much to be grateful for. The breath you take, loved ones still beside you, strong legs to walk, eyes that see the morning light. Practicing gratitude not only makes us happier, but also changes how we see the world. With gratitude, we become more patient, less judgmental, and more compassionate. We see that everyone is fighting their own battles, and their presence in our lives is already a gift. A simple way to cultivate gratitude is to keep a gratitude journal. Each night before bed, write down 3 things you were grateful for that day. It could be a good meal, a warm greeting, or simply a cool afternoon breeze. Over time, you'll realize the world around you is full of goodness you once overlooked. Gratitude also helps us face adversity. When difficulties arise, instead of only seeing loss, we can find lessons to learn and grow. Be grateful even for challenges, for they make us stronger and wiser. When the heart is grateful, happiness becomes steady, for it no longer depends on external conditions. Wherever we are, whatever we do, we can still smile and say, "Thank you, life." When gratitude becomes a natural part of life, the heart softens. We begin to see others with understanding, and compassion arises. Compassion is not just empathy for others' suffering, but a sincere wish to help them be free from it. It is the union of love and wisdom, where kindness is not blind, and help does not come from ego seeking to feel superior. The Buddha once taught that compassion is like a hand holding a fragile flower, not gripping too tightly lest it wither, not letting go lest it fall. Compassion is the balance between love and understanding. Love without wisdom can drown in emotion, harming both self and others. Wisdom without love becomes cold and distant. There is a story in the scriptures. One day the Buddha saw a small bird fall from its nest. He gently picked it up, placed it somewhere safe, and continued alms round. A disciple asked, "World-honored one, it's just a small bird. What meaning is there in saving it?" The Buddha smiled. Even the smallest life is precious. Compassion is not measured by size or material worth, but by the heart of the one who gives. In modern life, practicing compassion does not have to be something grand. Sometimes simply listening to someone when they are sad, smiling at a stranger on the street, or helping an elderly person cross the road is already planting the seeds of compassion. The key is whether we are truly present and open-hearted in that moment. Compassion also begins with ourselves. Many people are kind to others but overly harsh with themselves. They blame and torment themselves whenever they make mistakes. Practicing compassion with oneself means forgiving past errors, understanding that we too are just human beings, learning and growing. When we know how to love ourselves properly, we can love others fully. A well-known meditation practice to cultivate compassion is metta meditation, also called loving kindness meditation. You can sit quietly, breathe deeply, and silently send blessings. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. Then extend it to loved ones. May you be happy. And gradually expand to those you dislike, and eventually to all beings. Just a few minutes each day is enough to warm and open the heart. When living with compassion, we realize happiness is no longer something to keep only for ourselves. The greatest joy is when we see others suffer less because of our help. And the miracle is that when we give, we lose nothing. Instead, we receive even more, the deep joy within. After the heart has been filled with gratitude and compassion, the next step on the inner journey is letting go. Letting go does not mean neglect or indifference, but freeing ourselves from clinging and bondage to things that no longer serve us. It is the art of living with freedom, cherishing everything when it comes and smiling when it leaves. The Buddha once taught, "All suffering arises from attachment." When we cling to a relationship, an idea, or an outcome, we live in anxiety and fear of losing it. Letting go does not mean not loving, but loving freely, caring without possession, connecting without binding. There is a story of 2 Zen monks. walking along a path when they met a young woman stuck before a muddy puddle. One monk carried her across and continued walking. By evening, the other monk said, "Why did you carry that woman? We are monks." The first monk smiled. "I left her on the other side long ago, but you are still carrying her now." This reminds us that the burden often lies not in what we do, but in what we refuse to let go of in our minds. In modern life, we cling not only to people, but also to self-image, social expectations, or memories of the past. We regret what is gone, fear what has not come, and forget that the present is the only moment we truly have. Letting go is the courage to face the truth that everything is impermanent, coming and going according to natural law. Letting go is also a way of releasing energy. When we hold on to negative emotions like anger, resentment, or jealousy, our mind is like a cluttered room filled with garbage. Only when we clear it out can joy and peace enter. One practice of letting go is observing and accepting. When an unpleasant emotion arises, instead of resisting or fleeing, sit quietly and observe it. Recognize it is there, name it, and let it drift away like clouds in the sky. You will see that all emotions are temporary. Nothing lasts forever. Letting go does not mean losing, but opening. When you let go of a toxic relationship, you open the chance to meet healthier people. When you release unrealistic expectations of yourself, you open freedom to learn and grow. When you let go of fear, you open the door to new possibilities. True happiness does not lie in how much we hold on to, but in how much we are willing to release, so the soul can be light. When we let go, we are no longer bound by the past or haunted by the future. We live fully in the present, and that is true freedom. Thus, gratitude shows us what is precious. Compassion helps us share it, and letting go frees us from being bound to anything. These are the 3 doors to a liberated life, where peace is no longer a distant dream, but present in every breath and moment. If today's sharing helps lighten your heart, ease burdens, and learn to let go to live more peacefully, please leave a like as encouragement to continue spreading these precious teachings. And if you wish to go deeper with Dharma in motion into the Buddha's wisdom, so that each day is a day to understand yourself more, to love yourself more, and to live more freely, don't forget to subscribe. Each subscription is another turn of the Dharma wheel, bringing seeds of peace to more people. See you again in the next part, where we will continue nurturing wisdom and compassion in daily life.